Folks gonna look at it and say, dang, them boys did something mighty. And if we got us a tower, maybe we won't all scatter off like chickens in a storm. Now let me tell y'all what went down back in the day. See, at that time, the whole dang world was speaking the same tongue. One language, same words. Ain't no misunderstanding nobody. Now I know y'all was expecting me to show up in modern day Iraq, the place of ancient Babylon, with all them ziggurats and beardy fellas mumbling gibberish, but let me tell you, that flight to Iraq was out of my budget, so I went somewhere just as foreign, Guadalajara, Mexico. So folks were drifting westward, and they come across this flat stretch of land out in Babylonia. Looked nice enough, so they said, shoot, let's settle right here, crack open some cold ones, and make us a place. They got to jawing with each other. Hey, let's start baking up some bricks. None of them fancy stones, just good old mud bricks. And instead of mortar, well, we got tar. Sticky, messy, and it'll hold just fine. Then they all got fired up, talking, let's build us a city with a big old tower that pokes right up into the sky. We'll be famous, y'all. Folks gonna look at it and say, dang, them boys did something mighty. And if we got us a tower, maybe we won't all scatter off like chickens in a storm. But then the Lord, he come down from heaven, taking a gander at what these fools were doing. He shook his head and said, well, these fellas are all united, speaking the same tongue. If they can pull this off now, there ain't no telling what else they'll try next. Time to throw a wrench in their gears. So the Lord said, come on, let us go down there and gum up their words. Mix up the lingo, so half of 'em won't know what the other half's yammering about. And sure enough, that's what happened. Folks started shouting over each other, one hollering in Spanish, another barking in Chinese, some muttering in French, and poor Jedediah just sitting there with his hammer wondering what the heck bonjour even means. Ain't nobody understanding nothing. So they gave up on the tower, dropped their tools, and went their separate ways. And that's why the place got called Bible, 'cause it was one big old mess of babbling. And the Lord, well, he scattered them folks across the earth like seeds flying out the back of a busted tractor. Now y'all might be wondering why the heck were them folks stacking bricks sky high like that. Well, that tower wasn't just for show. It wasn't a skyscraper. It was a ziggurat, a big old man-made mountain, like a stairway to heaven for people to reach the gods. Now I know some of y'all be wondering, what in tarnation's a ziggurat? So I figured, heck, since I'm already in Mexico, why not come on down to Chichen Itza? Ain't no better place to show y'all what a real-life ziggurat looks like. See that big old stair-stepping pyramid behind me? That whole thing's what they call the Temple of Kukul Whatchamacallit, basically a giant man-made mountain built to impress the heavens. And that little stone shack sitting right on top, that's the sweet spot. This is where they did all the praying, sacrificing, chanting, hoping their God would show up and say, howdy. Same back then, them Mesopotamian fellas believed a ziggurat was like a stairway to heaven, a real-life mountain where their pagan so-called gods could come down and men could go up. But not all the way down, you know. The gods didn't come hang out in your backyard. They'd meet you up top in that little room built just for them. So get this, they actually thought that by building this man-made mountain in Bible, the Lord himself was going to shack up in that house on top. It was their way of saying, we ain't waiting on God no more. We'll build our own front porch to heaven, trying to entice or even force the Lord to come down to them. And who was leading the charge? That rascal Nimrod, mighty hunter, big shot builder, first empire maker. He wasn't just laying bricks, he was laying rebellion, trying to reunite all mankind under one language, one kingdom, one tower, but without the Lord. That tower, it was man's way of saying, we'll go back to Eden, but on our own terms. Now let me break this down real slow-like. Back in Bible, everybody on earth belonged to the Lord. One folks, one lingo, all of 'em his people. But them fellas, they wasn't building that tower to honor the Lord. They was trying to bring him down on their own terms, like saying, we'll build us a stairway to heaven, slap a little God shack on top, and make him come down when we holler. They didn't want the Lord as king. They wanted him as a fancy neighbor they could boss around. But the Lord don't play that. So he said, all right then, y'all don't want me? I'll let you go. And he did. He scrambled their words, scattered their butts, and put each nation under one of his sons. Them sons of God from his heavenly council. He told them sons, you boys go run them nations. But I will get a slice for myself, Jacob. That one's mine. Now listen up. Israel didn't even exist yet. But the Lord already had that plan slow cooking. And if y'all wondering where them sons of God came from, go on back and watch episode 1. It'll blow your boots clean off. So from then on, the whole human race split in two. The Gentiles, folks that got disinherited and placed under lesser divine rulers, and the Israelites, the people God would raise from scratch to be his own family. Now don't get it twisted, God was the Lord of all people at first, but when they tried to control him, he let them go their own way. And here's the kicker. Them folks in Bible thought they had to build a tower to reach God. But the Lord, he don't need no stinking man-made fancy mountain to be with his people. When he shows up, he comes down. He came down on Mount Sinai. He came down into a dusty old tent, the tabernacle, smack dab in the middle of the camp. Now don't get me wrong, the tabernacle was mighty fine. All that gold and blue and purple wasn't cheap, but that wasn't for style points. That was a holy blueprint, not a fashion statement. But the temple, that was David's little idea. The Lord never said, build me a palace. He said, just give me a tent and some folk who'll do it my way.
Now allow me to eloquently recount the divine encounter wherein the Most High commissioned our esteemed patriarch Abram to depart from his ancestral holdings.
Just kidding. Back to El Rancho. Here's what the Lord really said. Get up out of your land, leave your kinfolk, tell your daddy goodbye, and start walking. I'll show you the place once we get there. Now before that call came, old Terah had already loaded up Abram, Sarai, and Lot, rolling out of Ur of them Chaldees. But when they got to Haran, they just parked it and stayed put. Old Terah lived to 205 years. Then one day, he up and died, and when he did, he left his ride, a Chevy Astro van, to Abram. Though old, still a classic, and still running strong. So now old Abe, still Abram back then, grabbed Sarai, his nephew Lot, all their junk, strapped down the chickens, and hit the dusty trail like a man with a mission. They wandered round Canaan, pitched tents like a bunch of nomads, and every time the Lord showed up, Abe had built him an altar. But it wasn't all sunshine and sweet tea. Famine hit hard, so Abe told Sarai, pack it up, darling. We heading south, 'cause I've heard Egypt's got groceries. They step inside, and Egypt's humming. Drums, perfume, dancers spinning like tumbleweeds dipped in gold. Sarai, she was shining brighter than a chrome bumper at a car show. Abe felt that knot in his stomach. Girl, he whispered, you tell him you my sister, 'cause Pharaoh's the kind that don't ask, he just takes. See, Pharaoh didn't ask for dates or rings. If he liked your woman, he took her. And if you were the husband, well, let's just say he preferred widows. Pharaoh spotted her and near lost his mind, invited her right in, poured the wine, grinning like a coyote in a chicken coop. Abe sitting there smiling, pretending he ain't terrified. But the law don't play dumb games. Soon as night hit, Pharaoh took her into his chambers, but the man couldn't even lay a finger on her. For he knew it, him and the whole country started coughing, sneezing, and scratching like a barn full of fleas. Pharaoh jumped up yelling, "Man, why didn't you tell me she was your wife?" He booted Abe out faster than a possum on fire, and that couple hit the road, broke, dusty, but still married and still breathing. So old Abram, his missus, and that nephew Lot done packed up their chickens and all the junk they hauled out of Egypt. They loaded it high like a redneck truck bed on moving day and headed south, right on down into the hill country of Canaan. Back in Canaan, Abe and Lot had too much livestock and not enough land, so they split. Lot picked the pretty green valley near Sodom. Spoiler alert, bad choice. Abe stayed in the hill country like a real man of the land. Then there was this backwoods war. Kings fighting kings like it was some medieval mud wrestling tournament. Lot got caught up and snatched like a raccoon in a corn crib. Abe said, "Not on my watch." Took his 318 trained men, homegrown boys, and ambushed them kings at night, beat 'em down, and rescued Lot like a proper hero. On the way back, Abe met this mysterious feller named Melchizedek, priest of the Most High God, handing out bread and wine like it was Sunday communion. Abe gave him a tenth of all the loot, 'cause he knew that guy was legit. Then the king of Sodom tried to reward Abe, but Abe said, "Nope, I ain't taking so much as a sandal strap. Y'all ain't gonna say you made Abram rich." After all that went down, the Lord showed up to old Abe in a vision and said, "Don't you be scared now, Abram. I'm your shield, and I'm gonna be your big old reward." But Abe scratched his head and said, "Lord, what good's a reward if I ain't got no young'uns? Eliezer from Damascus is the closest thing I got to an heir, and he just runs my barn." Then Abe added, "You ain't giving me no kids, so I reckon one of my hired hands is going to get the ranch." But the Lord said, "Nope, that fella ain't going to be your heir. You're going to have one come straight out of your own guts, blood and all." Then the Lord took Abe outside, pointed up and said, "See them stars? Go on, try counting. That's how many young'uns you're going to have." And Abe believed him. No arguments, no back talk. And the Lord said, "Now that's the kind of faith I'm talking about." And right there, the Lord stamped him with his seal of right standing with him. Then the Lord reminded him, "I'm the one who yanked you out of Ur of the Chaldees and brought you here to give you this land." And Abe was like, "Well, how do I know for sure I'm gonna get it?" And the Lord was like, "Go fetch me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." So Abe rounded up all them critters, split 'em right down the middle, laid 'em out opposite each other like a holy meat aisle. But he left the birds intact. Then, as the sun started going down, Abe fell into a real deep sleep, and bam, a dark, spooky feeling came over him, and the Lord said, "Let me break it down for you, Abe. Your seed's gonna be strangers in a land that ain't theirs. They're gonna be slaves for 400 years, get treated rough, but I ain't gonna let that slide. I'll deal with that nation myself. And afterward, your people gonna come out rich. You, meanwhile, you'll live a long time and die peaceful, buried in your boots at a good old age. And your great-great-grandkids, they'll be back here once the Amorites get as wicked as they're gonna get." Then the sun fully set, and out of nowhere came this smoking fire pot and a blazing torch, and they passed right through the middle of them split-up critters. That same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, "I'm giving this whole land to your seed, from the river of Egypt all the way to the Euphrates." That means the Kenites, Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaims, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and the Jebusites. All that's going to be y'all's. So God just said to Abe, I'm the Lord that done brung you out of Ur of them Chaldees to give you this here land for an inheritance. Abe scratches his beard and asks, Lord God, how am I supposed to know I'm really going to inherit it? In other words, how can I trust you going to keep your word? And God says, bring me a mess of critters and cut 'em in half. And Abram, he immediately goes and does what God said cheerfully, because to the modern mind, that's a mighty strange answer. But when that ceremony we just saw was over, it says on that very same day, the Lord done made himself a covenant with old Abe. Now y'all might be wondering, what in tarnation's a covenant? Well, let me break it down for you. It's an agreement sealed by spilling blood and walking right smack betwixt them pieces of meat. A blood covenant, that's the most solemn, most sacred contract there ever was. Ain't no breaking it, not by man, not by any king, and certainly not by the Lord himself, because there's consequences for breaking it. Now listen up, y'all. There's a 9-step kind of ritual the Hebrews and other folks used to follow. Pay real close attention, 'cause if you grab hold of this, you'll be seeing the whole good book in a whole new light. Every page, every story, it's all writ down in this here covenant kind of way. Reckon y'all don't want to miss this. No, sir. So step number 1 is exchange of coats. You take off your coat, I take off mine. We swap 'em. Why? 'Cause your coat's who you are. Your name, your reputation, your family. Now I wear yours and you wear mine. See, that's like when Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord done covered him up in righteousness. He took Abram's old rags and gave him his own robe. Step number 2 is the exchange of belts. Back then, a man's belt wasn't used to hold his pants, but to hold his weapons. So now we swap belts, and it means your fight is my fight now. Your enemies are my enemies, and mine are yours. That's like when the law told Abram, I am your shield, and your exceeding great reward. In step number 3, it's time to cut the covenant. Now here's where it gets real. This ain't no handshake. This ain't signing some paper at the courthouse. This is blood and guts, straight up covenant style. So we grab an animal and we slice it right down the middle. Each half gets dragged and dropped, one on each side. Now there's a bloody aisle right in the middle, a walkway of trust. The animal's now split in two. One half represents me, the other half represents you. Then we both start in the center of the split animal. With our backs facing each other, we walk through the blood path, forming a figure 8, like an infinity sign. By the time we loop around and meet back in the middle, we're face to face. And then we each point to the animal on the ground and say, may what happened to this animal happen to me if I break this covenant. Step number 4. Raise the right arm and mix blood. We both slice a little cut on our right arms, raise them up, and press them together. Blood mixes, that's us becoming blood kin family. Not by birth, but by choice. Ain't no stronger bond than that. Same way, God done gave Abraham a cut of his own, the mark of circumcision. Folks say blood's thicker than water, but what that really means is the blood of the covenant is stronger than the water of the womb. Step number 5, exchange of names. Now that we're one, we swap names too. You take part of mine, I take part of yours. That way folk know we tied together till death. That's how Abram became Abraham. God done gave him his H, the very sound of his spirit. And God, he took Abraham's name, and in return folks started calling him the God of Abraham. Step number 6, make a scar. We keep that cut open long enough to leave a scar. It's a mark, a reminder that, hey, I'm in covenant. Don't mess with me unless you're ready to mess with my blood brother too. Now here's the deal, says the Lord. This here's my covenant y'all gonna keep. You, your boys, and your boys' boys after you. Every man-child among y'all's gonna be circumcised. Yup, that means cutting the flesh of your foreskin. And that cut right there, that's the token, the mark that shows it's me and you in covenant together. Step number 7, give covenant terms. We lay it all out, y'all. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. What you own I bless, and what I bless becomes yours. If I ain't got no rent money, I grab your checkbook, no questions asked. If your truck's on empty, you roll with my gas money, no complaints. The Lord told Abram, I'll be your God, I'll give y'all this land forever. Through you, all families of this earth gonna get blessed. That's the blessing side. But peek in Deuteronomy 28, plain and simple. Blessings if you obey, curses if you don't. Step number 8, eat the covenant meal. Time to eat, not just for the belly. This meal seals the deal. Bread and wine, most times. The bread represents my body, I would break it, like the animal split in half. And when I eat it, I'm saying, I belong to you, and you do the same. The wine represents my blood. Life is in the blood, so what I'm saying is, I give you my life, and you do the same. Step number 9, plant a memorial. We set up a big old rock, or even better, we plant a tree and sprinkle it with the blood of the split animal, so that everyone would know a covenant was cut right here. Next time you pass by, you remember what went down. This ain't no throwaway moment, it's for keeps. We saw that Abraham asked the Lord, how can I be sure you're gonna keep your word? God answers by making a covenant, and with that he was saying, because if I don't keep my word, let what happened to the animals happen to me. God is willing to put his very existence on the line before he lets his word fail. Now listen here. Right after the covenant, old Abe's tent turned into a soap opera. Sarai couldn't have no babies, so she told Abe, take my servant gal Hagar. Maybe we'll get us a family that way. Abe said, aight, went in, and sure enough Hagar got pregnant. Soon as she did, she started strutting like she owned the place. Sarai got mad, blamed Abe, and Abe just shrugged, saying, she's your gal, do what you want. So Sarai came down hard on Hagar, and Hagar ran off into the desert. But the Lord's angel found her by a spring and said, girl, go back home and obey your mistress. Don't worry, I'm giving you a boy named Ishmael. He's going to be wild as a donkey, always scrapping with folks. Hagar said, this here's the God who sees me. And later she bore Abram a son, Ishmael. Abe was 86 years old. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared and said, I am Almighty God. Walk before me and be blameless. I'll make a covenant with you and give you countless descendants. Abram fell on his face while God told him, your name will no longer be Abram, but Abraham, for I have made you the father of many nations. I'll give you the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession. As a sign of the covenant, every male must be circumcised, whether born in the house or bought with money. Any uncircumcised male will be cut off from the people. God also said, your wife's name will no longer be Sarai, but Sarah. I'll bless her and give you a son through her. She will be the mother of nations, and kings will come from her. Abraham laughed and thought, can 100-year-old man have a child, and Sarah at 90? He said, if only Ishmael could live before you. But God replied, Sarah will indeed bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. My covenant will be with him and his descendants. As for Ishmael, I have blessed him. He will father 12 princes and become a great nation. But my covenant is with Isaac. That very day Abraham circumcised himself at 99 years old, his son Ishmael at 13, and every male in his household, just as God had commanded. Later on, the Lord done showed up again to Abraham out by them big oaks of Mamre. Abe sitting in his tent door, while the noonday heat was cooking the dirt. He looks up, and well, I'll be hog-tied, there's 3 men standing yonder. Soon as he sees 'em, Abe jumps up, runs out, and bows himself down flat on the ground. He says, sirs, don't you all pass me by? Let me fetch some water so you can wash them dusty feet. Park under this oak, rest a spell, and I'll bring y'all a bite of bread so you can be strong for hitting the trail again. And them fellers said, all right then, do just like you said. So Abe hustled into the tent and hollered, Sarah, girl, quick now, 20 quarts of fine flour, knead it and bake up some hot biscuits. And Sarah's muttering, 20 quarts? Lord, who you feedin'? A whole county fair? But she got to work. Then Abe runs out to the herd, grabs him a tender young calf, and hollers at his hired hand, fire up the barbecue grill and cook us some ribeyes, get them country fries sizzling, and throw in some cornbread, something fit for guests. The boy hustled off. After a while, Abe comes toting those ribeyes, some milk curds, and a jug of fresh milk. Sets it all for them 3 men, and he just stands nearby under the oak while they're eating. Then the men asked, Where's your wife Sarah? Abe says, She's right there in the tent. And the Lord says, What in tarnation? Did y'all catch that? It don't say the men no more. It says plain as day, the Lord. This ain't just 3 random fellers having lunch. This here's the Son of God showing up hisself. Yes, sir. That's Jesus. This is how the Almighty sets foot on this old earth. Abe ain't jawing with strangers. He's under them oaks of Mamre talking to the Lord in the flesh. And the Lord said, Mark my word, I'll come back around this time next year, and Sarah's going to have herself a son. Well, Sarah was listening at the tent flap, and both her and Abe were old, beyond the baby-making years. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, Now ain't that something? Me all wore out and my old man pushing 100, and we gonna have a kid. But the Lord said to Abe, Why'd Sarah laugh? Why'd she say she's too old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I'll be back at the set time next year, and she'll have a boy. Sarah got scared, so she tried to deny it. I didn't laugh, but the Lord said, Oh, yes, you did. And when them 2 fellers got up to head on toward Sodom, Abe hollered after 'em, Y'all, sure you don't want a couple of burritos to go? Wrap 'em up tight in foil. They'll still be hot when you get there. Then the Lord said, Should I hide from Abraham what I'm fixing to do? He's going to surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the earth will be blessed through him. I picked him because I know that he'd teach his children and his household to keep the way of the Lord, to do right and fair. So I'll bring to him what I promised. Then the Lord said, The hollerin' about Sodom and Gomorrah is louder'n a freight train, their sin piled high as a haystack. I'm fixing to head down there and see if it's really that bad, and if not, I'll know. The men turned and headed toward Sodom, but Abe stayed standing before the Lord. And Abe come near and said, Lord, you ain't gonna wipe away the good with the wicked, are you? Suppose there's 50 decent folk in the city. Will you still sweep it away and not spare the place for the 50? Far be it from you to do such a thing, treating decent folk same as bad. You're the judge of all the earth. Ain't you gonna do what's right? And the Lord said, If I find 50 decent folk in Sodom, I'll spare the whole place for their sake. Then Abe kept on bargaining, whittling the number down, all the way to 10. But truth is, there weren't even 10 decent folk in that whole town. That evening, them 2 angels come rolling into town in the ride of God. Lot was sitting by the city gate watching the comings and goings. Soon as that truck pulled up and them angels stepped out, Lot hustled over to meet 'em. He bowed low to the ground and said, Please, sirs, come stay at my place tonight. Wash your feet, rest up, and hit the road at sunrise. But them fellas said, Nah, we'll just sleep in the town square. Lot weren't having that. He pressed 'em hard, near begging, till they finally followed him home. He whipped up supper, flat bread, no frills, and they all settled in. But before they could even kick back, here comes the whole dang town. Old men, young men, every last rascal from Sodom crowded round Lot's house hollerin'. They beat on the door, shouting, Hey, Lot, send them fellas out here so we can have our way with 'em. Y'all know what they meant. It wasn't no Sunday picnic with fried chicken. They was planning something very low, wicked, and dirty to do to them. Lot stepped out, shut the door behind him, and said, "Brothers, please don't do this wicked thing. Look, I got 2 daughters who ain't never been with no man. I'll bring 'em out, and y'all can do what you please, but don't harm these guests, 'cause they under my roof for protection." The mob roared back, "Get out of the way! Who made you our judge? We'll do worse to you than to them." And they lunged at Lot, near busting down the door. That's when them 2 fellas yanked Lot back inside and slammed the door shut. They struck the mob blind, from the oldest geezer to the youngest punk, so the whole crowd stumbled around pawing the walls, not finding the door no mo'. Then the men told Lot, "Round up your kin, wife, daughters, sons-in-law, anybody you got in this city. We're fixing to torch this place, 'cause the outcries reached the Lord, and he sent us to wipe it clean." Lot hustled to his future sons-in-law and said, "Get up, get out of this town. The Lord's gonna destroy Sodom." But them boys just laughed, thinking he was joking. At sunrise, the angels rushed Lot. "Quick, take your wife and daughters, or you'll be swept away when the city is punished." Lot hesitated, dragging his boots, so the men grabbed him, his wife, and the 2 girls by the hands. One of them fellas said it plain, "Run for your lives. Don't look back. Don't stop in the valley. Head for the hills, or you'll be wiped out." Lot begged, "Please, not the hills. I'll die out there. Let me run to that little town yonder, Zoar. It's small enough. Can I go there instead?" The angel said, "Fine, head to Zoar. We won't destroy it 'cause of you. But hurry, we can't torch Sodom till you get there." Soon as Lot hit Zoar, the Lord rained fire and brimstone from heaven on Sodom and Gomorrah. Flames swallowed the cities, the valley, the folk, and every green thing growing. But Lot's wife, she looked back over her shoulder, and right then she turned into a pillar of salt. Next morning, Abraham got up and looked toward them cities. He saw smoke rising from the land like a furnace burning. The Lord remembered Abraham and spared Lot when he destroyed the towns where Lot had lived. Now Lot was scared to stay in Zoar, so he took his 2 daughters up to the hills. They holed up in a cave. One night, the older daughter said, "Our pa's old, and there ain't no men round to give us children. Let's get him drunk, lay with him, and keep the family line alive." So they gave Lot wine, and the older girl went in and lay with him. He didn't know when she came or when she left. Next night, the younger one did the same. Both girls got pregnant by him. The older had a son named Moab, forefather of them Moabites. The younger had a boy named Ben-Ami, father of the Ammonites. Now about Sodom and Gomorrah's judgment, don't go thinking the Lord's like some spoiled kid throwing a tantrum 'cause somebody scratched his toy truck. Folks see it that way today when they read this and other passages of Scripture, but nah, this weren't no wild party where folks signed up for. In these cities it was the norm to force folk, men and women alike, and even young'uns, whole crowds taking turns all night long. That's how rotten they was. No consent, no decency, just wicked through and through. So this was judgment on whole towns that done turned low, wicked, and dirty. They earned it, plain and simple, 'cause remember, there weren't even 10 decent folk in them whole cities. So the Lord shut it down right there. Otherwise that virus of corruption would have spread town to town like some storm clouds rolling in, covering the whole land till it was sick with it. And then what? Another flood? No, senor. It had to be stopped dead in its tracks. And that's how the tale of Sodom and Gomorrah ended. Fire, salt, and a whole mess of family trouble that echoed down through Israel's story. And don't y'all gonna miss episode 3. So don't be a stranger. Subscribe and turn on them notifications so you don't miss a single twist in the Redneck Bible. During season, new episodes dropping every Wednesday at high noon, Phoenix, Arizona time. And if y'all want to keep this project rolling down the dirt road like a rusty old pickup truck, slam them super thanks or use the link in the description, and the good Lord will multiply that seed like Abraham's stars in the sky for you. See y'all then, and remember, if the good book's got it, We gonna read it redneck style.